the guys with the apple can take a picture, though. Only the guys with the apple get to take the picture, right? And beside Mr. Wozniak is our entrepreneur who became mayor, Barkett, the mayor of the city of Jerusalem. And I think we could think of no better host to take the conversation from here. So Nir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dana. Shalom, everyone. Steve, we chatted earlier about, interestingly enough, we have similar background. We both have done in business. We're in the high-tech sector. We both love technology and education. You became a teacher. I got engaged in education 17 years ago as a philanthropist. Ever since, we're both extremely involved in education, but with a technological entrepreneurial background. So I'd like to ask you a question.
Yeah.
The kids, they are now more exposed. Look at the crowd. They're more exposed to technology than we can ever dream. How do you take advantage of technology? How do you make them more creative, better people, more values? You've been a teacher. Give us your perspective on the kids of tomorrow, the kids of today.
Well, when I first developed the personal computer, one of my big goals was to apply it to education, because now we were going to have instant feedback. You didn't have to wait till the next day to find out if your homework was right or wrong. You know, if a dog poops in your living room, you don't slap its head 12 hours later. It doesn't learn, you know, you want the immediacy. And I thought computers were going to change how smart people are. It didn't happen that way so much, but look to where we've gotten with today's internet, mobile technology, researching everything people's doing in the world. Learning is a lot different than just reading a book and memorizing. It's really knowing how to research and get information. And today's students are so much more capable than the ones before, but computers are still pretty much just the tool, the standard tool that you find in every school.
There are many people think that too much technology could be detrimental. Sometimes people try to depress technology in the school system, in the education system. Sometimes parents don't want the kids to be too much exposed to technology. What's your perspective?
I hear that, and my whole life I was a technologist and determined that yes, we're inventing stuff, and good things have bad sides to them, but you can't stop the movement forward. Change will happen, and if you stand in the way of it, you're going to get run over. So I'm for it. Now, yes, there are some negative sides. If you look at how did we used to live, and how do we live now? And you look at a kid who's constantly on their computer in their room, or nowadays just carrying around and constantly looking at their smartphone, and they're not dealing people to people. They're not socializing the way we had some of the greatest fun of our life. That doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's the newer, modern way that they have their fun.
Well, I assume as teachers and the people in the education system, we have to balance the kids, balance between not to have too much, and naturally, getting exposed to technology could give a lot of value add to the kids.
Yeah. One of the problems is our computer devices are so fun to use that sometimes, you know, people almost be addicted and want to be on it all the time, and we think they're missing out on other parts of life. They're not really studying. They're getting behind in school, and that's a factor, and it happens. But you know what? No matter what age you looked at, some of the kids just weren't going to be interested in school, and we're going to drop out anyway. Do we see somehow education rates going down, people coming out dumber? No.
Steve, 15, 17 years ago, we started with the first generation, which is creating a class or lab in every school that the kids rotated on. Then we went to a few computers in every class, and then we went to computer for every teacher. By the way, we have all the computers every teacher in Jerusalem has a computer with an ability to screen and project. And now we're going to the next generation of computers in the school where all the kids have a platform. Give me the perspective of the teacher. How do you see the role of the teacher getting the kids educated?
Well, first of all, I see that the products over time got simpler and simpler and easier to use, and you didn't have to be as much of a computer expert to use them. When you had to be a computer expert, the students knew how to use all this equipment, and the teachers stayed away from it. Students will generally only live up in the ability to create good homework, good, attractive printouts, etc. They're only going to live up to what the teachers expect you can do, and that was a big problem. But now that the machines are getting so easy to use, any teacher can really understand something as simple as today's tablets. There was one of my 8 years that I taught, one of the 8 years we used, I passed out laptops every year. One year we used a clever one from Apple based on an early tablet called the Newton Message Pad, and this machine was called the eMate, or I think it's eMate, and it had a little keyboard on a screen. It was so simple. Got rid of files, it got rid of all these computer words, directory structures and megabytes and everything. It was so easy. That was the 1 year the teachers learned to use it and loved using it in their class to point out and beam assignments to the students.
Yeah, well, what I've learned is that eventually if you want to bring new technology to the school, to the class, or to the school, a third of the teachers get it immediately. A third, you work relatively hard to train them to use it in the best way, like the better teachers. And sometimes a third of the teachers find it extremely difficult to catch up with technology. From your experience, how do you deal with that? How do you enter a school with infrastructure and help the teachers take advantage of technology in the class?
Yeah, clearly the computer is the most important academic tool we have today. And that actually happened a long time ago, back when we were first putting networks into school. Even before the internet, it was clear that was the case. One of the things that you got is, well, yes, a lot of teachers just kind of, we all grew up. People grew up. I was one of the last people to get away from a newspaper with open sheets. It was so easy to follow and to go to the computer like my kids did. But, you know, the trouble is that that's the modern world. And I'm hoping for the day that a teacher, a computer, is sort of a full-time teacher and doesn't need that much of a human teacher. The computer is human enough to attract the students and guide them and be trusted.
That's interesting because we're deploying infrastructure in Jerusalem these days that it's based on the kid's ability to learn himself. And the teacher has the knowledge as a platform to know who's moving fast, who is stuck, and how to help them help himself. It's sort of an infrastructure, a piece of infrastructure using technology that enables the teacher to measure and to manage the classroom. She knows what she never knew in the past.
Yeah. One of the problems we have is we put these great computer devices into the same education system that has certain flaws. And one of the big flaws is that the teacher has to manage 30 students that all have individual problems. So having the technology pinpoint a few examples will probably make the teachers a little more efficient in that way. I don't know that it's a total change in how smart the kids are.
Well, it's probably going to help the teacher better know what the status of the progress of all the kids.
As teacher is still pretty limited, and we've got a lot of the other detriments of the modern education system with us. You have to learn the same pages in the book on Monday as everyone else, the same pages on Tuesday, and on Friday you get a test on those pages. What if you get excited about a subject? What if I love learning this bit of history? I just want to study it and read more material, and it's all available online now. You can't really jump ahead easily because the school has a test on a certain pages of the book on Friday, and you're going to be compared to everyone else and called intelligent if you have the same answer as everyone else and it's not your answer.
Well, I think, I don't know what your opinion is. The earlier, the more open and flexible. Kindergarten, first grade, elementary school, you give the teachers and the kids the maximum flexibility you can relative to high school. In high school, it's more content, and naturally you learn more things. But I prefer getting computers early as much as we can. What's your perspective?
Well, I was very surprised. I didn't think that very young kids, 2 years old, could use these devices like computers. And when the iPad came out, all the kids actually, I hear story after story after story of kids that young using it. So, you know, I don't know. It's just helping them.
There's a big debate.
I forgot your question, though.
Well, I said you want to go early and give more flexibility for creativity.
Oh, I did have a comment, which is, one of my comments is, almost all the teachers in school can tell you that by about third grade, 8 years old, they can tell which students have decided school is not going to be a big part of their life. I guess it's because we're compared and we have tests and we have grades and they know, oh, Johnny always has the answer first. He's the smart one. It's not me. And a lot of them decide kind of to drop out. School's not going to be important for the rest of my life. That early, we need to figure out a way to give better attention there. And I'll tell you, one thing I learned is class size is the most important thing. One teacher who cares can never fail. One teacher that's a little bit smart and cares can never fail. One teacher per student would be an ideal if we could ever get there. I mean, I come from California. In the United States, California, out of 50 states, is 50th, the lowest in class size. It has to do with a proposition, a government deal that got passed a long time ago, less money for schools, and we're 47th out of 50 states in dollars per student and 43rd in computers per student.
Yeah.
Way down the list. And boy,
that's true. You know
class
that
size, we're the worst.
we've done some research. The happiest kids, the best performance kids have, has nothing to do with computers, of course. The happiest kids are the ones that feel that their teachers love them most. It's true.
Well, we all remember one or two teachers that were important in our life.
Yeah.
That were that way, but that's a good feeling. And I taught classes of many different sizes myself for 8 years, and I found in the smaller classes, boy, I could never fail. And if the class got to a certain size, some of the students wouldn't be paying attention. It was
Steve, what do you think about measurability? There's a big discussion in Israel. Should you measure the ability, the results of the kids? I'm a fanatic of measurability because I believe that if you can't measure it, you cannot manage it. But there are different opinions on that. Naturally, it doesn't mean that you mustn't have the ability to enable people to, as I said earlier, to be very creative, and you can actually measure creativity as well. What's your perspective on that?
I'm awash in it. I'm not solidly for or against measurability. Measurability can take a lot of time away from the real task of learning. It's like even if you document every little thing a kid does into a database as a teacher,
I agree.
Well, you're taking a lot of time that could be used for real education, really getting the kids. The emotional level of learning, I think, is a lot more important. Even remembering teachers that loved you. And if we're doing constant measuring where students are, they're being called intelligent or not based on whether they're doing exact little assignments and not whether they're thinking on their own. And the student that sort of contradicts things and thinks for themselves and wants to challenge things a teacher says is called dumb. They get a low grade.
Now, in terms of investing in education, investments made in education, usually there's a state, there's a country, there are parents. Are there any opportunities on the business side, you think? I mean, if you had the opportunity, would you invest in education?
Well, I certainly did. Apple certainly did. Apple was the biggest investor. We believed in education right from the start. It was one of the motivations for starting our company, was that these computers were really going to improve the quality of learning. I was actually afraid that once kids had computers, they were going to get smarter than me so fast that the world wouldn't even need me.
But unfortunately, there's not a lot of companies that are focused on education.
There was a point in time when software cost a lot of money. It wasn't just free, download an app for $1 on the internet or get it for free. It was actually costly, and business models were there so that companies who made education software sold lots of boxes to the schools of the country, and there was a lot of business there, and there was a lot of investment in it. But especially the K-12 education sort of fell out of favor as being low profit in later years.
In Israel, I think that you find lots of high-tech, ex-high-tech entrepreneurs that decide to reinvest some of their capital back in the education system. Is that also common in America?
Very common, because especially those of us who have technology successes, we really go back and we think it is all due to my education, gave me the advantages that allowed me to do these great things and go through entrepreneurship, some of the most exciting times in life. And almost all the founders of the big tech companies, Google, certainly myself for Apple, give a lot back into education directly. But I gave more than money. If you have a lot of money, that's easy to give. But I gave my own time for 8 years, and because I feel you got to make if you really care about it, you give yourself, you make a sacrifice.
Yeah, I have to admit, as mayor, I hold a portfolio of education myself, and I'm engaged especially in entrepreneurial ideas. How do we bring iPad to all the high schools, to computer for every teacher, to all the elementary schools? How do we intrigue computers in one way, shape, or form to the kindergartens? And the challenge is, how do you take that knowledge that we have gathered in our high-tech career and feed it back to the system, to the straightforward public system?
Yes, well, the computer is the ideal tool of education, but how do we make it enjoyable? How do we make a student want to learn rather than having to learn? And that's a big challenge, too.
Well, you give them a tool that could be used both for school and out of school in a way that is used between him and his peers and his friends, etc.
natural. It's a part of our life.
Yeah.
It's also fun to use your own muscles nowadays on the touch tablets. That was a big step for computers, even over the mouse. And you know, you got to make it fun, but I think we've got to build in a lot of ways to make it gaming and interesting. Here's the problem. Computer software right now is available for all the curriculum, and it's sometimes a little animated and entertaining. It's a little better than a book, let's say, but it still feels like a book to the student. It doesn't feel like this is a human friend that I'm doing something with. And I'm hoping for the day that computers get sort of a consciousness. The software is so great that they seem to have feelings for you. They know about you, and they intrigue you like, this is my friend that has given me a little guidance and knows exactly when I should break and have a little entertainment.
That's exactly where I struggled for many years as an entrepreneur, as a philanthropist. Because you see the teachers, they want what they know to be framed for the kids. Now, the kids go outbound to the internet, and they want to see the internet in the school. And the clutch there doesn't always work well, because the innovation usually doesn't come from the public sector. It comes from the private sector. And to adopt new technologies into the schools, if it's the same old stuff, then it may be easier. But to introduce fun stuff and other things that people find on the internet, that usually needs adaptation to the school, adaptation to how the teacher can use it. Have you been engaged in such a... What do you think about this issue?
Well, no, I admire all the people that think the way you do. First of all, the technology is a part of our normal life now. And a school's going to do a lot better if they bring your normal life into the schooling process, into the education, into the management of it. Because you're going to feel more comfortable, and you're going to feel like, oh, good, they respect what I use. A lot of the problem is, of course, teachers can teach what they want to do. Almost every subject we have in school is what all the teachers can teach. It's in books, it's pre-written, it's learned material, and that doesn't allow for the kid that wants to go well beyond it. What if the student gets so interested in a subject and they want to learn well beyond even the first week they're in school, they want to learn the whole year's material as quick as they can and go beyond it, but they're not really allowed to. The school system doesn't make for that. These devices and openness to the internet, the open world of education really does make that possible now, but we need a different class of teacher maybe that understands. In my class, a lot of students are going to be going at different subjects at different speeds, and how can I manage that? We haven't figured out the new school system yet.
Well, that's what we're challenging, and that would be my target and goal, to enable a platform, it's internet-based, that enables the kid to have the books, the best technology that one could teach in schools. They could choose, the teachers can choose, the schools can choose, have lots of options for the kids on the platform, and have a measurability system that actually focuses us to exploit the potential of every kid.
Well, if the computer is doing the objective analysis of this is how far along you are, you could go into a class, and rather than a grade being a variable, your grade and your performance in the class is predetermined by yourself. I only want to be allowed past this class when I am at a certain level of competence. Everybody wants A's. Until I'm up the A level, you keep quizzing me and figure out when I get there, and the computer can do that determination.
Right.
It's a different method than our testing method of today.
And the teacher could spread his time where the teacher could be more effective helping the kids help themselves.
Okay. Well, let's pretend that half the people in this audience are teachers and half are students. The teacher could turn to one of the students and work with them, knowing the subject well, and the teacher would never fail. One teacher per student. You're never going to fail, even if it's your own child and you really care.
So they would go to every kid. They know where they are at the progress of what they need to do, or how creative they are. Are they using or not using the internet? And go and help them help themselves. And my focus is on not telling them what to do, but helping them be creative and invent their own wheels and come up with their own ideas based on the technology that helps them get there.
Well, creativity is a problem because I know you care a lot about it.
Yeah.
And when I look at the schools, I think, oh my gosh, the one thing we're missing is students that come out of school, and by the time they get out, they're creative. They think out of the box. They create things we didn't have before. They change the world really in a lot of ways. And you know, and creativity is diminished the day you start into school. You're diminished because, oh, I'm curious. I was born curious. I want to explore the world. I want to learn. I want to open every drawer and see what's in it. Oh no, I have a class of 30. You're not permitted to do those sort of things. I remember when I was in, of course, university, but I would buy computer books, and I loved computers. They were so new in the world that not many people knew about them, even in the university yet. And I would buy those computer books, and I'd go through them on the weekend, and I'd have completed every single problem in the book, and halfway through the book by the time class started on Monday, because I loved it. If you have a passion for a subject, you know, it's much more important. It's less important what you teach students. It's more important if you can motivate them to want to learn. A student that wants to learn will never be held back, will never keep from learning.
You know, I think in Israel we're very fortunate. Israel's called Startup Nation in many, many places. We are at a relatively early age, just post-school, before college. Most of the kids go to the Army. And in the Army, they're challenged with life and death situations and challenges. And one of them eventually develops Iron Dome and develops technologies that in many, many ways are imaginable. Most people wouldn't even imagine such technology. So creating Iron Dome, hopefully you agree with me after you had been to Sderot yesterday, is an amazing, creative idea.
Well, Uzi told me that his kids sort of had a phrase that there's good missiles and there's bad missiles. There's good rockets and bad rockets. You know, the rockets from Gaza Strip are just bad technology. Computers are good technology.
So we get exposed, and a lot of our kids get challenged at very early age, at the early 20s. So a lot of the college and even young kids in Israel understand that they have to be very creative, because eventually they're going to go to the army, to fighting units. They have to be creative in the paratroopers and in an intelligence force and anything we do.
You know, I think back in my own life, when I see young kids, usually it's university level, sometimes high school level, and they have all these ideas, and you can feel they have a passion. They want to start something. They want to be a part of the positive change for the world. I love that. That's the entrepreneur spirit.
Right.
And and so that's so great, and we've got to do everything we can not to diminish it, not to kill it off.
Right, and that's why we're so focused, at least me personally, to focus on that integration between technology and pedagogic experiences. On the other side, their values and how to create the best people in the world. And what we really want to make sure that we don't just have geeks, but we have people with values, and that does not necessarily go through technology.
Yes, it's difficult because we don't all have the same values. And do we want to impress our idea of good values on kids? In my own family even, I felt like the way I was brought up. My parents didn't force their values on me, and I'm not going to force mine on my children. I'm not going to make all their choices for them. I kind of believe you should just go through life and develop your own. You should be educated and study and make your choices, you know, based upon largely education more than anything else.
Well, in Jerusalem, we have any kind of system you want. We have Jewish, Christian, Muslim, ultra-Orthodox, secular, national religious. They all have their different picks, and naturally everyone could choose his own school. And within the different schools, there's so much variance. Unfortunately,
I'm not familiar with it, but I admire that.
Well, there's huge variance, and unfortunately, though, the exposure to technology is usually much more in the secular, national religious, and the Arab side. Less on the ultra-Orthodox side, yet it's people elect the education system they want.
I'm very glad to hear that, and I think that's good for education. When you, as a student, you're making your own choices, you have more motivation, and it has more meaning in your life. This is the choice I made, and I'm glad I made it. I don't know that we all get that chance, though. There's a variation throughout families and the way we run our lives.
So when you were in school, did you think you're going to be an entrepreneur and be in the technology side?
Yes, I was just so advanced. I was going to be technology. I never had to worry in my life about having a job in electronics. I was just one of those lucky people. I never went to college thinking, what am I going to do when I get out? It was just too easy for me. Like I said, back before we had computers in our schools, I could design any computer in the world in 2 days when I was in high school. I just taught myself. There were no classes. There were no books. So, yeah.
I got no. Can you hear me now? Yeah. So I want to, you know, a lot of people in the audience, I think, in a way, feel that you stole their revolution, you stole their chance because the Apple, you know, the iPhone, the cell phone, this revolution has taken us so far that it would take a lot of time before we move on to the next step. So I wanted to use this opportunity to ask you, if you were to start all over again, what is the next big leap that these kids or these entrepreneurs should be investing in?
Thank you. Now, the big change companies that we recognize, the Googles, the Facebooks, the Apples, and all that, the huge ones, they kind of wind up being able to kind of control the market, and they've got so many millions of man-years of code and stuff written in them that there's nobody could start up and do the same equivalent job quickly as an individual the way we did when we started. And yet all individuals want their own place. But you can never guess where the next big breakthrough is. When we started Apple, our investor told us that, well, once a decade on the average, there's a whole new category of product that rises so fast, makes the billion-dollar companies in a short time, but you can't ever guess. If there was a formula, there's a lot of smart analysts and stock market people that know a lot more about finance and business and companies than I do. They'd all be making all the tons of money. They'd be able to predict it. You can't predict it. Sometimes it's a lot of feeling what other people are feeling and what they would want as products and their ways of living life. You have to have that feeling. Steve Jobs spoke about this quite a bit, and largely the focus has to be on making some kind of excellent products. They're new, they're different. They don't follow the rules of that category of product, or they're something that didn't ever exist before. It usually starts with physics and chemistry, new materials that make new things possible, and you've got to, but don't have ideas. A lot of people think, I just got an idea for something that would make life great for people. No. You've got to have an idea that you know of something that would be great for yourself. And if you're an inventor, you're not just an engineer, you're an inventor, you want to go into a laboratory, you want to build it or write some code, you want to get a working model, even if it's virtual, right away so you can really see and prove to people how it works. So try to get a working model first, I say.
And do you still feel that urge, or you've done your share?
I feel, when I was an engineer, it was so intense and focused a part of my life to be that good at it that, turning something that I designed into a product with cases and sales and prices and boxes, that wasn't my thing. You know, luckily I had the right partners. So that kind of engineering, it's so intense. You realize that you only have the physical and emotional, mental energies to do it when you're young. And eventually you get to a point that you kind of have to go and manage ideas. But like I'm saying, ideas to me aren't worth a lot because 10,000 people could have the same great idea you have right now, but it's the people that actually get down and build something and make it work. So you've got to have a teamwork. You've got to have ideas, and you've got to have people that actually build things.
Well, I think the ideas are not necessarily going to be pure technology. They could be, look how Iron Dome changed the whole weight of the between the Israeli army and the Hamas. God forbid, without Iron Dome, where would we be without it? So technology is not necessarily only in the gadgets we use. It could be in health, life sciences. Look at the biggest IPO Israel ever had just 2 weeks ago. Mobileye, it's a company based in Jerusalem. That actually changes through picture imaging. It's a new platform that enables driverless cars in the future.
Well, technology builds on prior technology. So every time you accomplish something good in technology, you yourself carry it in your mind, but other people have been stimulated in their own thinking. You carry that method in your mind that the next project you work on will take into account your education that you learned creating it. You'll be able to use those same techniques, those tricks of creating something good again, and you'll be able to build upon them. But the most important thing of all is not to come through school learning a bunch of methods to build things. Come through school learning the method to develop in your own head, working on paper, thinking to develop the methods to accomplish things different ways.
Now, with technology today, you can reach so many people in the world. It's so viral. You have great ideas, and you don't need to go through the tax authorities nor governments. It could actually, great ideas fly a long, long way, and it doesn't always need to be net technology.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you to stand up here. We're going to have this huge selfie with all the audience in the back. So everyone will be in. Okay, are you ready, guys? Okay. Yeah. Turn around. Let's see if we squeeze it. Wait a minute. Let's see if we can squeeze in as many as the crowd. Okay, come on. Ready?
Get me on the side.
Okay. Steve Wozniak and Barkett, thank you so much for